If you've ever asked yourself, how did I get here? Then today's video is for you. I'm talking about the leaks, the accidents, the pain that feels like it came out of nowhere. If this sounds familiar, then you're going to want to tune in because today's video isn't just about the leaks. It's more about the whispers your body's been sending you before the leaks started. So I'm going to delve into how you got into this rut and show you how to get out of it. So let's get into it. So I want to start with a recent conversation I had with a patient, and it started because this patient has been dealing with leakage, vaginal pain, hip pain, a little bit of low back pain. There's a few pelvic floor symptoms that this person has been dealing with. And in the session, we were talking about the external triggers that are making the pain worse or aggravating her symptoms. And so, I was sharing with her that a lot of the things that we don't really give a lot of weight to are the very big things like stress, poor sleep habits, not hydrating enough. Those are the things that can really make our symptoms worse. And so she asked me, she's like, well, how do I know when enough is enough? How do I know when I'm stressed out? Like, what does that even mean? And I thought that was a really good question because I serve a lot of women like her that are overachievers, very high functioning, they may not realize that they're operating from a place of overstimulation and survivor mode. And so when she asked this question, it kind of made me think, really, that's the whole reason why I'm doing this video today, because I think there's so many of us, myself included, that can fall into this category and just keep going and not realizing that that pattern and that cycle is what's contributing to the problems that you're having. So I first want to kind of explain, what does that even mean? Like, what is the survival mode and like what's not normal? And so it's really difficult for a lot of women to assess because we have what I call, or what I've coined the term, these emotional anchors, like really embedded in us that make us feel like we should be able to handle it all. So it's hard to really know when to tap out. Maybe you're the strong friend. You always have it together. You don't really like to ask for help, and you feel like you should be able to handle this on your own. And so we don't really ask this question until we're like way too deep in, everything is quote unquote going well. The kids are fine. The house is running. Nothing from the outside looks wrong, but inside you don't remember the last time you felt like yourself. You're tired and wired. You're waking up tired after a full night's sleep. Maybe you're leaking. Maybe you're overwhelmed, but you're at the point where like it feels like, when you're in a pool and the water's like right under your chin. And for people who are like great swimmers, maybe that's not a panic feeling. But for someone like me who's not a great swimmer, like that makes me a little uncomfortable. So when the water's right there, it's like, you're not under, but it's still just, it's kind of a suffocating feeling, like, you're okay, but you're still just not calm and you're still not feeling like yourself. And so those women who are kind of going through life like that, they feel like, okay, I'm okay, but their nervous system is just completely out of whack. And so those are the things we want to talk about, that invisible buildup, like your metaphorical cup is overflowing. Another example that I think of is like, if we think of a physical cup, which we talk about all the time, you hear people say like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And we all hear that. But if you have a metaphorical cup that you're just constantly pouring in, like think of a waitress at a restaurant, she's coming to fill your glass. Maybe she turned her back because she's looking at another table, or one of her peers is like trying to get her attention. So she's continuing to pour with her head turned, and before you know it, the water is everywhere because she's not really paying attention to the fill line. And so that's kind of like us. Like if you're not paying attention to the fill line, before you know it, water is everywhere. So today I want to speak to you about that invisible buildup. Like what does that really look like, and how can we stop that from the overflow? All right. So I consider the invisible buildup the pre-problem stage. Like you might not be leaking, you might not have any pain just yet. And again, nothing is wrong, but you just don't feel like yourself. You may be having these internal conversations like, I should be able to handle this. Like I've been through worse, because there are times where we've been through really, really stressful times and we couldn't function as well. And so we're always using that as the barometer, like, okay, I'm not dead, so I should be able to handle this. And that's just not really a healthy or functional functional way to look at things. And so the physical presentation of this can be not being able to focus. I already mentioned waking up tired. You're not feeling present. Maybe you're having conversations at work or with family members and you find your mind drifting off a lot. You're just not really able to kind of hone in on anything. You might be snapping at your kids or your partner in the moment. And then, maybe several hours later, you're like, dang, maybe I overreacted, or maybe it just wasn't that serious. But you just kind of find this like emotional instability. You really don't know if you're coming or going, but then yourself kind of peaks out here and there. You may feel like yourself at points, but then there's also these extreme versions of you that you just don't feel like you have a handle on. You may be making empty promises to yourself, like, okay, I'll take care of this A, B, or C when this part of my life settles down, or I'll be able to focus after this big event, like a wedding or a promotion at your job. So it's kind of like that if-when thing, if this happens, then I can commit to paying more attention to myself and my symptoms. And we know that that can just be a vicious cycle because life is always busy, especially if you're a mom like myself. I'm a mom of 3. There really is no slow down period. And so this literally is survival mode. There is no crisis. That cup has not overfilled yet. The water is not everywhere, but you are not thriving. You are just surviving through the minute. Nothing's getting worse, but it's definitely not getting better. And this is the danger zone because this is like the tipping point of right before these symptoms kind of begin. And they may feel like they came out of nowhere, but this is where we need to really be paying attention to how we're caring for ourselves. This connects to your pelvic floor. And the reason why I'm even spending time mentioning this is because your pelvic floor is very much connected to your nervous system. So if you're in survival mode, your entire body responds to that. So it's kind of like constantly being in this fight or flight. And so fight or flight means that your body is like kind of ready for danger, ready to respond to danger. You're guarded, your muscles are tense, you're not really able to relax, even when you're in a safe environment. And your pelvic floor directly responds to that. That same area of your body where your vaginal and rectal muscles are is going to be tense. The muscles are going to be shortened and difficult to relax. And these things are highly correlated with urine leakage. And so these are things that we want to look out for. And leakage may be the first symptom that you notice, but there are definitely a lot of signs before that you could be having some pelvic floor issues. So today I'm going to go over just 3. There are many, but I'm going to go over 3 very common symptoms that are easily ignored or kind of brushed off as quote unquote normal that could be correlating with leakage or happening before the leakage even begins. So number 1 is constipation. And I have had several clients and patients in the past tell me that like, oh, I've always been like this. I've always had a difficult time pooping. My mom says I was constipated as a baby. Like I've heard a variety of stories, but constipation is not normal. It means that something is going on internally, and there usually can be a link within your pelvic floor. And so as I mentioned earlier, the muscles are supposed to be relaxing at the time that you're poop. Like you shouldn't have to push, not even a little bit. You shouldn't have to strain. And if you're doing that, you're actually kind of creating a discoordination type of situation. So you're tensing up and pushing when the muscles are supposed to be relaxed. And so a lot of times this is addressed with being told maybe by a medical practitioner, you need more fiber, you need more water. But typically there's not a lot of coaching that corresponds with that. Like how much do you need for your body size? Is it soluble fiber or insoluble fiber that you need more of? Like there should be a little bit more direction with that. And that's just like one aspect of it. Constipation is affected by not just what you eat and drink, but again, your pelvic floor muscle function, your stress levels, your activity levels, how often you're moving your body. And so these are things that you need guidance through. And so that again is an indicator that something's going on with your pelvic floor that could be happening well before the leakage even starts or correlate right along with it. Number two is pain with sex. And so this is a really big one, but I don't know that a lot of women talk about it as much or really feel comfortable with mentioning it to their doctor or provider or seek help for it, because there's also this side of pain with sex where it's culturally accepted, for women to feel like they have to undergo some sort of discomfort to please their partner. And so pain with sex is not normal. That is also something that indicates that there could be something going on at the pelvic floor. It can be addressed, it can be resolved. But if we're not talking about it and we think our role is just to please our partner, then we're less likely to speak up and get help for it. And if you've never been told that it's not normal, no one's ever asked you about it, it's never been addressed, then that's something that could be going on for a very long time before the leakage begins. And again, or something that could correlate with the leakage. Number three is back pain. And so again, super common. A lot of us have had aches and pains, maybe even old injuries. So back pain is something, unfortunately, that I think can be not easy to live with, but easy to brush off, especially if it comes and goes. Sometimes the older you get or the longer you've had it, the less able you are to bounce back from it. So it kind of like keeps like tapping your shoulder, like, hey, I need some attention. And then it becomes more and more debilitating the more and more that you ignore it. But low back pain in particular, highly correlates with stress incontinence. And stress incontinence is when you leak with a cough, a laugh, a run, jump, lifting. Like if you're leaking with those kind of activities, typically that is there's a high correlation with low back pain. So that's something to look out for, because that can be tied to a pelvic floor problem. And again, that's something that's easily ignored in the beginning because most people can kind of push through. But back pain is something that could be going on before the leakage begins or correlate right along with it. Both are things that need to be addressed and you can get help for. So those three things are examples of the whispers before the screams, before the cup is overflowing, before the leakage becomes so big that you can't ignore it and you're having to wear pads. And so what do we do about that? Next, that's what I'm going to be talking about. What do we do instead when all of these things are whispering? Instead of ignoring it, what can we do to address it? So number one, I want you guys to really absorb this. You want to get to know your body, track your patterns instead of your symptoms. And so I find a lot of times it can be hard for people to correlate when these things are happening. So you want to track patterns. Do you notice that your back pain is worse the week before your period? Do you notice that your leakage is worse when you're not sleeping as well? These are the patterns that you want to start. You don't necessarily have to journal per se, but you really do want to start paying attention to, because when you do seek professional support, which I highly recommend, the more data you have, the better that provider can help you. So you want to be able to know, like, this has helped me, this has not helped me. These are the things I've tried. These are the things that I've noticed. You want to know what your triggers are, what makes it worse, what makes it better, what positions are you avoiding, what activities are you avoiding, are you not being as social as usual? Those things matter. And so it may seem like something small, but we want to start tracking these patterns so that we can help, so that you can help the provider that you've chosen to support you. Number two is, this is my favorite one. I want you to stop waiting for a crisis to justify support. The house, which is you in this metaphor, I'm using a lot of metaphors today. The house does not have to be on fire for you to call the fire department. So we don't need to wait till you're bursting in flames, like literally in crisis mode, until you say, hey, I need some help. Like, you have to be in a better place of receiving support so that you don't allow yourself to get to that crisis level. Because when we think about the word crisis, our lower level ways of managing and prevention, they don't work in a crisis. You need immediate action and immediate solutions that can resolve the problem right away. And so we don't want to wait until we're in crisis to justify just asking for support. And so in that metaphorical house, we want to take action when we start to see smoke or smell smoke. Those are the whispers, like the back pain, the constipation. Those are the whispers that your body is sending you. Even the emotional triggers of not being more irritable and not being able to sleep. Those are also things that justify support. Those are not things that you have to wait until they're just you're not functioning to ask for help. And then I'm just reading through to make sure that I hit everything. And then lastly, you want to, it kind of connects to what I just said, but you want to ask for help before you're desperate. And so crisis, like I said, requires immediate action, but you need time to explore, research, connect with the right provider. And when you're in crisis, you're not really able to do that. When you're desperate just to get an answer, you may say yes to some things that you really don't agree with just because you're desperate to relieve the pain or relieve the leakage. And so, of course, there are women who fall in that category, and sometimes things move really quickly. But I want you to know that you don't have to wait for that to justify support, or you don't have to wait until you're desperate to resolve the problem. And so when you find the right provider, again, you want to take your time doing that. You don't want to feel rushed. You don't want to miss the opportunity to do the proper vetting, because having the professional to support you through your pelvic floor needs is really important, that you establish a good rapport. And again, you want to be prepared to be in a season of acceptance, because you may need to adjust some things, modify some things, and change some things that have nothing to do with just doing pelvic floor exercises. There's a lot of lifestyle modifications that come with changing your pelvic floor function. And so you want to be in a season of being able to accept that type of support and those type of recommendations. So again, this could mean a slower schedule, more delegation, establishing a better support system, because something has to disrupt the cycle of survival mode. Survival mode, again, is something you may not even realize you're in until you've heard some of the things I've discussed in today's video, but we need a big disruptor. And that comes from getting support and, again, making modifications that you may not realize that need to be adjusted. Doesn't mean you couldn't handle it, but it does mean you could be just handling too much. All right. So in closing, how do we know when it's too much? We know when we stop feeling like ourselves, when we're surviving instead of living, we're not growing. We're just kind of going through the motions. We're going to work every day. Like I said, kids are fed and things are taken care of, but you're just not at your best. And the goal isn't to wait until your body forces you to slow down. The goal is to start paying attention to these things so that you can address these pelvic floor issues before you kind of get into that crisis mode that I've mentioned a lot today. And lastly, I want you to know you deserve support before things fall apart. So if you don't hear anything else from this video, I hope you got a lot of takeaways, but that is my main takeaway. I want you to know that you deserve support, and you don't have to be in crisis to receive that. So again, as always, I thank you for joining me in today's video. Please don't forget to subscribe and like so that you don't miss any future videos. If something resonated with you today and you'd like to apply to work with me one-on-one, there will be a link below that you can click on. So thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.